Welcome to Channel 17, the Town of Colonie Government Channel.
Thank you very much. Can you hear me okay? Okay. I also have with me today, I brought along our comptroller, Craig Blair, in case you have any questions regarding our financial plan or our budget. So I kind of came up to him at the last minute and said, do you want to take a ride with me? And of course he said yes, so I might help with some questions that you may have. Since the last time I was here, and again it's a pleasure to be here, an awful lot has occurred over the last several months. One thing that we have been working on for quite a long time has been our financial plan to stabilize the town's finances. I don't know if any of you were able to make any of our sessions. We had several town hall meetings in various parts of the entire town. We had 6 altogether, and we were able to lay out our entire plan so that people could see where we were headed. And we've also completed our budget for 2009, and we'll vote on that on the 30th. We gave an overview of that at the town board meeting last week. And aside from that, there are several other things going on with development throughout the town, restructuring to help us with our finances. And we've been working with our Senior Services Resource Director very closely. So there's been a lot of things that have gone on. That's just a few. You sound like you have been very busy over the last several months as well. So it makes me feel good. I'm not the only one that's working very hard here. So this is great. But it sounds like you've been having a lot of fun as well. I thought I'd break it down into a few parts. Do we have any time constraints? No? No? Okay. Okay. All right. What I'd like to start off with is just to, as I've stated, we had 6 sessions throughout the town, and it gave a very clear overview of where we would be headed for the next, it's a 10-year plan for the next 10 years. Obviously, we can only deal with the current time period now, and the 2009 budget reflects a lot of what our plan has, and we will continue from there as we're allowed to do so. The financial plan, we went over this as well with our auditors, our financial advisors. We meet periodically with Moody's Investor Services down in New York City. They're the people that give us our bond rating, which currently is a Baa1 with a negative outlook. So we're working very hard. Our first goal is to be able to have that negative outlook removed. It doesn't help us when we go out to borrow money. It causes us to have much higher interest rates, something that we want to get away from. So we think we're almost there. If we get through the 2009 budget passed, and we continue on the path we're on, we think we're close to reaching that first goal. They're very strict as far as what we need to do to get that negative outlook taken off. And then after that, we would go right into getting that rating up with a goal of getting it back to AAA1, which would be a great benefit to us. What we did is we outlined what our goals were for the plan, and of course it was to resolve the cumulative deficits. We just completed our 2007 financials with our auditors. And as of 2007, the deficit was at $19.4 million. It's a very large number. For 2008, those financials won't be done for a while, but one positive point that I'd like to bring up is that since January, we've conserved about $6.5 million off the 2008 budget. And that came in the form of attrition, if people retired or moved to a different position. With restructuring, we tried not to fill the positions unless we absolutely had to. That's what our auditors are suggesting. Our personnel costs are very, very, very high. And through attrition, we can reduce that number, hoping to avoid any type of layoffs. The next goal was to restore the actual fiscal stability. And as I've stated, we'd like to get that bond rating up. We'd like to get rid of that negative outlook. And we'd like to be able to have a better interest rate so that we don't lose so much money. And all of that has to do with improving our credit rating. And we also worked very hard to create a very structured, balanced budget for 2009. It was critical to reduce the amount that we're spending for 2009. And in today's times, that's very, very difficult. We're getting hit from every angle. When you watch the news, it's either at the federal level, the national level, the state level, the county level. Everyone is having a very, very tough time. So we work closely with the various municipalities to see where they're headed, if there are some things that we can share to possibly save money, anything we could possibly do. So we worked very hard to create that budget. We had to bring the cost down. The 2007 budget was the budget that we could compare to, where the costs were listed at around 81,000, I believe, but the actual amount of money that was spent was approximately 91 million. So we're already in a difficult position because we've got to bring those numbers down. But we worked extremely hard and came up with what we think is a very good budget, working very hard to avoid double-digit tax increases, which is, that was a very scary thought that was hanging out there. And we had to come up with creative ways to be able to stabilize without massive layoffs, without cutting services. We looked at everything we had that we could possibly sell that wouldn't have an impact on anyone. So we looked at everything we had. We consolidated positions, as I stated earlier, cut out all kinds of waste, things that we thought we had to have, but we certainly can live without. And I think that's the theme nationally and statewide, that we have to learn to live within our means. We're in a position where this is the message that we're given all over. It's a very difficult time, if you're retired or facing retirement soon. It really is something that I don't remember happening. And I truly can say that everyone that has worked with us on the budget and the financial situation is keeping all of that in mind and trying very hard to make this work. We have to begin to build some operating surpluses. Back in about 2000, I think it was 2002, 2001, 2002, we had about a $12.5 million surplus, and that was very good. And before that, I think the number was even higher. At this point, we don't have a surplus, but that is a goal for 2009. This was something that was requested by our investors, Moody's investors in New York. And that is we needed to balance our budget, build a surplus, and be able to stop our dependence on what they call RANs, which are borrowing notes, that we've had to do just about every 3 months this year to find a way to pay salaries and operating expenses. That's how critical it is. And we feel that for 2009, if things go the way we've planned, we will be able to stop that dependence on those RANs and stop depleting all of our enterprise funds, which is our water department, our pure waters department, our landfill. They are on separate budgets, and they do create some surpluses, and a lot of that money has been depleted. So it's important that if you take the surpluses, that you make sure that you leave those departments with enough money to function and operate, as well as to leave them a cushion. So those are some of the things that we have been faced with. We've worked with a team of experts over the last 10 months. I have to say, even though I was an educator for over 25 years, math is not my favorite subject, and it's one that I've had to focus on for the last 10 months. But luckily, with the help of our comptroller and our assistant comptroller, deputy comptroller, as well as the experts in the field that we've worked with, auditors, financial advisors, again, our investors from New York. We've had a team of advisors on our transition team. These are all people that specialize in the field of finance. And they gave us very good direction. And the interesting part was that very often when you get that many groups of people together, it's very difficult to reach any type of consensus and come up with an answer that everybody's happy with. But with many sets of eyes looking at the situation, they did come to consensus, which gave us a very good path to follow. One of the most difficult things walking into the situation was being faced with not only being new to the system, but also saying, this is where we're at right now, and we need millions of dollars to operate that we don't have, and we've got to find a way to get that money and to be able to keep everything going. So your mind starts going in many different ways, and we've always enjoyed a very high level quality of services in the town of Colonie. I've been here for 35 years since my husband and I were married. We've raised our children here. I've had the opportunity working for North Colonie for many years, just getting back after raising my children and just substituting in any department that I could get into, and having a lot of fun with that, and then returning to school and earning my degree in human services and psychology, and then education. And I worked for many years teaching students with special needs at the junior high level, for a few years at the elementary level. And it was one of the most rewarding careers, that I could ever ask for. So I feel very privileged to have had those opportunities. Growing up, a lot of things were difficult at times, and there's things that you think you can accomplish. But from this group, just listening to what you do, if you put your mind to it and never give up, you can accomplish an awful lot. And so when I came into this challenge, I thought that we could definitely get back on our feet. It's impossible to have a town like the town of Colonie with the great services, the quality of life that we have. We have outstanding school districts. We have great services for seniors and youth. And we have something that a lot of our neighboring communities don't have. I visited a lot of the areas, Schenectady, Albany, Troy, a lot of the smaller villages, and we have a lot of advantages. We may not see that right now because we're in this financial situation, but not giving up hope and putting together a very strategic plan to follow. We do have many more advantages than a lot of these other places have. When you ride around the town of Colonie, just about every piece of land is developed, whether it's a residential neighborhood from the past or new development, new homes, businesses that have popped up all over. A lot of corporate offices, a lot of work has been done to the airport. There's just so much going on. Currently, we're having the whole area where Route 7 meets I-87, where the bridge is there at Exit 6. That's a major project, the biggest project in this town pertaining to anything to do with the Department of Transportation. And this is about a 3-year project, and that whole area will be improved. We have to have patience as we go through it, but when it's done, we'll be in much better shape. And it's all of these things that we have that a lot of these other areas don't have. They don't have the population. They don't have the tax base. They don't have development, and they don't have current development wanting to come into their areas. So they have very little to draw from. So very often what you'll see in the neighboring municipalities is you'll see every year the taxes go extremely high, the services get cut, and a lot of people get laid off. And that's exactly what we didn't want to see happen here, because we do have too many positives. We have trouble accessing. We had trouble accessing what we have in the town that puts us in a positive position. And so that's what we needed to do, and that's what this plan was all about. So as I said, we had the opportunity, and we continue to work with the professionals, and we will do that as we go along. We had an excellent budget committee that was put together this year, and they will continue next year monitoring the progress of the budget so that when we get to 2010, we'll have a baseline to follow. We'll be able to see, are we succeeding with the budget? Are we headed in the right direction? We have a major problem with cash flow. This year alone, with the deficit, we ended up with a $10 million cash flow problem. That means the RANs, borrowing the RANs for $5 million each to pay salaries. That's what it affects. So we have to build up our cash, and we had to think out of the box. How do we do this? How do we do it evenly? And how do we do it without going under and having to have a state control board come in? And what they do is they take over your finances, and they basically tell you how you can spend your money, what you can do, and what you have to cut. We didn't want to do that. So we worked very hard on trying to think out of the box. And that's basically where we came up with the idea of the one-time tax. It's strictly a corrective action, and it's written up as only for the year 2009. And to do it fairly, we took a look at the taxable assessed values. For example, if a home is assessed at $75,000 after exemptions are taken out, that's what the one-time tax is, $75. If your home is assessed at $140,000, that's what it would be. So we took a look at that to see how could we do this where all exemptions were out. How could we do it fairly, because some of us live in homes that are assessed at between $50,000 and $100,000, and there are some homes in the town of Colonie that are multi-million-dollar homes, as well as businesses range from small businesses to very large corporations. And so that's how we came up with that idea. We actually got some input from residents saying, let's just bite the bullet in one shot and let's get back on our feet. And finding a way to do that fairly was the hard part. And looking at the number of taxable properties, both commercial and residential in the town, that's what we came up with. And so that will help us with our cash flow problem, help us from going under, and put us in the right direction. So for 2010 and on, hopefully we don't ever have to be in this position again. So we looked at some of those things, as well as looking at the future of our landfill, which generates income. We're looking at energy, improving on energy. We had an audit done that will bring us far into the future, that will help us to improve upon our energy costs. As the costs go up, we have to find ways to make the money to pay for that so the burden doesn't come back on you. And there are systems in place where we can have long-term plans improving our energy, and the costs that we save pay for the plans. So we've been doing things like that. Our sales tax is still very, very strong. We believe that because of the nature, the makeup of Colonie, that the town of Colonie, that will stay strong. This is a very trying year, few trying years ahead of us. But I know it's really hard to see at this time because we're faced with such high numbers. But we are very blessed in this town with many strengths. And just the way I taught my students, you look at your strengths, not your weaknesses. And you go forward by making those strengths carry your weaknesses along. And it's amazing what you can accomplish when you take on that attitude. And that's what a lot of it is. For a lot of us, it's very difficult to turn on the TV, and you do get you form a very negative attitude because every time you turn around, you get hit another way. But it's very important not to lose sight of what we have here in this town. And we are far ahead of a lot of areas, and we will be able to see that again once we stabilize. And we're looking forward to that for 2010. So those are the kinds of things that we have been working on. As I said, we have our 2006 financials done at this point. We have the 2007 financials done. And 2008, we're hoping that the work that we've done since January will help us, at least a little bit, to take a little bit of the edge away, so that we can maintain and go forward. And those are some of the things that we have been working on. As I said, we've reduced a lot. We included a lot of short-term objectives in our plan, just things that are luxuries that we have to put on hold, like certain types of traveling that our employees do. We have to look for classes and things that they can get their training, that are places that are closer to home to reduce the costs. We look at intermunicipal agreements to see where we can share with other municipalities and save some money. We put a freeze on all non-essential spending. It's hard to believe, but we saved thousands of dollars on just journals and magazines and things like that. Uniforms, conserving. When you don't have a lot of money, you don't go out and do a lot of shopping and buy a lot of clothes. So you take a look at what we have and try to conserve and make them extend a little bit longer. We reduced our capital expenditures, which are our long-term major projects. They were scheduled for $10 million a year. We reduced those by 50%, bringing those down to $5 million a year, and putting off the ones that we don't need to have right now. We're looking at pooling our resources within our departments. The town is made up of about 26 different departments, and each of those departments operates independently. And we have to teach them to operate in a more collaborative mode, because there are a lot of things that they can share and a lot of ways to save money. Just a simple example, the manhole covers on all of our streets, we were contracting all of that work out. When we have our own highway department, and the highway workers themselves came to me and said, please let us do this, we can do this, we'll show you that we can do this. And they put their crews together, and they did do it. They've been doing it since springtime, and they've done a nice job, and they've saved us at least $300,000 by doing that. So it's those kinds of things that are going to help us to advance. And I won't bore you with all the details of the plan, but I can tell you that it contains a lot of short-term objectives, many that we've already achieved since January. And then there are long-term objectives, and that means that whatever administration is in place for the long term, these things need to be really followed very closely and addressed on a very consistent basis, so that this never gets ahead of us the way it has. For the town of Colonie to have that type of deficit is really, it's unheard of. But we were very, very stable at one time, and we have a lot of great things, a lot of amenities in the town that we do enjoy, and that's where some of the money went. But we're at a point, again, not just here in Colonie, but nationwide throughout the state, where we've learned that it's time to put the brakes on, and we can do more with less if we just take our time and take a look at how we do things. We went and took a look at what's called deficit funding, and that gives us a 10-year funding through the state that would provide us with some help. That takes a certain legislation, but it also takes what's called a majority vote from our board. And that means instead of having a supermajority vote, instead of having 4 votes to win that vote, you would need 5. We couldn't achieve that, so we couldn't use that option. It may be something in the future if it's needed, but let's hope it's not needed. And that's why we went to more creative ways, because there are only certain things that we could do, that certain doors were shut, so we had to find another way. But our goal, again, is to create that structurally balanced budget, which we think we have for 2009, and to effectively eliminate those deficits, which we're on our way by implementing this long-term plan that will help us to do that. And we want to be able to ensure that we have good growth in the town with the areas that are left, to take a look at some of the abandoned areas that have been sitting there for a long time and attract businesses that want to come and revitalize those abandoned areas. There's 2 things that happen. It makes our town much more attractive. It cleans up the environment, but it also gives us tax dollars. So we're looking for good development, for not only for new development, but for revitalization as well. And when we take a look at residential development, we have grown tremendously. We've got to take a lot of things into account. We've got to take a look at traffic patterns, which we're trying to remediate a lot with the development that we do have, as well as take a look at our schools, and are they prepared? Are the numbers going up? Are they going down? Those types of things. And again, it's critical that we build a surplus in our budget. Very hard to say on one end, okay, we have a $19.5 million deficit, and on the other end say, we're going to build a surplus. That's exactly what we need to do. We need to eliminate that deficit, but we need to build a surplus so that pot starts to build, and we get to a point where when we do run into a problem, we have some reserve funds. So those are the kinds of things that we've been working on with the long-term plan. And again, our budget process has gone very well, and we can answer any questions that you might have regarding that as well. And we're hoping that with this budget, we will begin to work within our means to keep our taxes low, to prepare for 2010. I've been trained that when you're in this environment, when you're in this time period, you immediately start training for the next time period, which would be the 2010 budget. So there's definitely no rest, but we will keep going with that. And we've had some real positive things that have occurred financially. We sold Heritage Park, and we received our share, which is $2.7 million. It's a tremendous help. And we have some other assets that we're looking at. We have revenues from our methane gas system at the landfill. And we will continue to look at properties and consolidation and restructuring to keep some revenues coming in. So that's where we are with our financial plan. And again, with our budget, we have reduced spending. We have been able to keep positions going without layoffs. We've done some restructuring, which has saved us quite a bit of money. In 2008, from January to now, as I've stated, we've saved $6.5 million, and we've shaved off more for the 2009 budget. Some of the other highlights, other than just hearing about money, is we've done some new things. As I've said, Route 7 plan is going. I don't know if you've made it over to the crossings. We've had the farmers market since May, and all of the revenue from those vendor fees goes into the pot to do repairs at the crossings. So we've gotten excellent feedback. People like the farmers market a lot, and we will do that again next year. But it is a revenue source. It's not huge, but it does help. We were able to repair the boardwalk around the main building this year. So little things like that do help out. Again, as I said, we continue to work with our senior services programs as well as our youth. We have a new plan in place for our planning, which is going to help us to speed up our planning a little bit, but keep the quality there. We've had some projects that have been on the books sometimes for years, and we have some developers that say, I can't hang on that long, and I may have to go to another municipality. We didn't want that to happen. So we visited our neighboring municipalities again for some advice. And what they told us is many of them utilize a service that's called town designated engineers. So we're able to expand our planning staff and engineering staff without any cost to us. These are firms that work with us, but they're paid for by the developers. But what they will do is extend our staff, because that's one of the holdups. We don't have enough staff to keep up with things. And they say that they need more time. So this will give us the staff we need at no cost to us, and again, looking for the quality development and redevelopment. So those are some of the things that I wanted to highlight for you. And again, just a few highlights with the budget for 2009, getting back to the budget. This was the first time a budget committee was formed, and it was formed of various department heads in the town, as well as with our town comptroller and myself, and our deputy supervisor. And I think it's a good use of our staff to bring them in so we can see different perspectives. And they get to see where all the money's going as well, because they were very shocked to see what some of the other departments spend, what they spend the money on, and what our finances are. They were very, very shocked to see that. So it was a little bit of reality therapy for them, but they graciously agreed to stay on for the year and actually had a lot of fun. It was a good learning experience. The total budget for 2009 is $86.9 million. That represents a 5.3 decrease over the 2007 actual expenses of $91.8 million. There are many things that have happened. As I said, we've saved money through 2008 and going into 2009. Just through attrition, we've reduced 17 positions. So that means 17 people didn't have to get laid off, which was very, very good. We're merging our highway tax and property tax together into one. The bottom number, it doesn't change. It's just they were on two lines on your bill. And the auditors and the state comptroller, the sales tax, or or the highway tax, that money along with the sales tax was not being used properly, so they've shown the town how it has to be used and what we need to do over the next 3 years to correct that. So you'll see that on your bill. It'll be on one line, which I think really reflects more accurately where the money is going. It's going for operating expenses, and so it should be listed under town property taxes. Those are some of the things that you see. The increase is 3%, and that's 1.5% is from a shift in the base proportion from the state legislature. So what we've added is 1.5%. Very salary increases due to negotiations and energy costs and operating costs. And what that amounts to is a house that's an average house in Colonie assessed at about $140,000. That's a house that would sell for maybe $225,000. That increase is about $11.20 for the year. So it's 8 cents per thousand, so that gives you an idea. On an average house, it's about a dollar more for that. Certainly, the one-time tax, it is a hardship, and it's based on assessments. It ranges from $1 to whatever, and it won't be there next year. That will give us the revenue that we need to operate and not pay all this interest on these RANs and take the risk of having our bond rating drop to junk bonds. That interest rate comes back on your shoulders, and so we had to eliminate that. So those are some of the highlights in the budget, but there are a lot of points to it, so I'm not sure if any of you were able to attend our last board meeting, but we did go over quite a bit of that at that time. Other than that, because I don't want to put you to sleep, but it's been a very challenging 10 months. I guess that's the correct word, challenging. It's been a learning experience for me. I love to learn, and I love a challenge. I will do my best to stand up to whatever challenge is put forth. And I think that when I see things turning around and I see stabilization, and I get to see all the good parts of the town and everything that people enjoy, it makes it all worthwhile to fight to stabilize our situation and to continue to offer the excellent services and look ahead with many of the things that are coming. You know, I look at things, being a human services worker and an educator, I'm trained to break things down, larger things down into more manageable parts. It's much easier to address a task if you look at it in smaller parts than if you look at it as a whole. Sometimes when you look at things as one big whole, it's very overwhelming, and it's good to accomplish those goals one step at a time. So I make sure that we've been doing that. I've made sure that people work hard and that we are accomplishing our goals, and check each one off as we get closer to our ultimate goal of being where we want to be. But you know, I look at things from that perspective of breaking it down and look at the entire town, all the departments that we have and how they function. I've learned an awful lot about some things that I really don't enjoy, like stormwater management and some of the engineering things that it's just not my thing. But you know, you learn a lot and you do have fun with it as you find out there's a lot more to it. I just left this morning. We have a building conference going on at the Turf Inn. For our town is hosting it from our building department, and the many people from around the entire state that are attending this conference to ensure that our people in the town are kept up to standards for building and codes and those types of things. And it's a challenge to reach everything in this size town. But you see all the parts that go into the whole big picture. and they're tremendous. This is a huge town. It's a huge town. And you look at each department and what it offers, and you look at the various stages when it pertains to human services type of activities, such as working with seniors, working with youth, working with our schools, those types of things, the services for our public safety and protection. There's always something going on. It's extremely interesting. It's been a great 10 months, long hours, long days, but well worth it. And as I said, it's a pleasure to be here. I enjoyed being here a few months back. I don't know where the time went, but it flew by. And I certainly would be happy to entertain any questions you might have. I know it's hard to sit and listen, so we will begin with some questions. Yes, Ted?
Where do we stand, or do you stand, with the alleged fraud with county waste in the landfill? Because that is really real. That's a lot of money coming in.
Yeah. County waste, that and the landfill, that particular situation is something that is being investigated by the Attorney General's office. We are cooperating 100% with the Attorney General's office. We did have our own audit conducted of the landfill, and there are a few things that we're waiting to hear. At this point, they're strictly allegations. We know that for a while, for many years, there wasn't a particular type scale for the larger trucks at the landfill, but we do have one there now. And so what the results of that are going to be, we are awaiting that as well. We haven't heard anything. We've complied with providing records that the Attorney General's office has asked for. And once again, County Waste works with us all the time. We were told to continue business as usual. They accommodate our needs, and at this point they are allegations and in the hands of the Attorney General's office. If we find out that there truly was wrongdoing and that there's anything that's owed to us, I will certainly go after that. But again, at this point, they're only allegations. So we as a town can't interfere with that investigation, but we're obligated to cooperate fully, and that's what we're doing.
Thank you.
Yes?
I want to make sure I understand this correctly. The one-time tax is going to be 10% of your assessed value of your home?
No, well, what it'll be is whatever
Would
your...
you please repeat the question so that we know
Okay.
what you're answering to? Thank you.
She's asking about the one-time tax. If the fee is 10% of the assessed value, okay? The way it works is we took 1.0 times the taxable assessed value. So if your home, when you look on your bill, you will see assessed value and taxable assessed value. The reason we went with taxable assessed value is because many of you have what you call various exemptions. I don't think it's going to stay. You have exemptions and reductions, so we wanted to make sure that they were applied. And so therefore, by going with the taxable assessed value, your exemptions are already in there. The taxable assessed values in the town, they range from a very low number to a very high number, because we do have homes that are in the $1 million range, multi-million-dollar range. But it gets a little confusing. Our equalization rate in the town is 67%. That's what you're taxed on. You may see something on your bill that says full value, and that's what they feel that your house would possibly sell for. But your one-time fee is on the taxable assessed value. So to make it very simple, if your house is assessed at $100,000, the fee would be $100. So you can just drop the zeros and you can see where that's at. If your home is assessed at $55,000, your fee would be $55. Very difficult to find a fair way to do these things. And there was a lot of back and forth with, how do we avoid going into those double-digit numbers for taxes? To be able to take in the amount of money we need, you'd be looking at extremely high tax increases, 25, 30%. That's unheard of. It would force people out of their homes. It would force businesses to leave. And it's not what we need. If you had a permanent high tax increase, I haven't seen any administrations that once those tax increases get on, that they take them away. That's why we had to think out of the box and be really creative. And how do we do it fairly? And that's when we looked at the taxable assessed value. Of course, myself being, math not being my favorite subject, I'm like, well, why don't we just do $100 for everybody? But then it doesn't work, because we have people that are in, as I say, multi-million-dollar homes that are working and really have a lot more income to work with. And then we have people that have been in their homes for many, many years and are retired or whatever on fixed incomes. And so we looked at that taxable assessed value, because that allowed us to look at the number that we could work with. Your exemptions were already calculated, and that seemed like the fairest way to go. Okay.
When do we get that bill?
We tried to do it earlier for October. That's why we needed the legislation, because that's not your typical tax time. But it went through the Assembly, and then it didn't get on the floor with the Senate. So we wanted it then, because we wanted to assure you that it was exactly what it said. It's a one-time corrective action. It's not something that gets attached to your permanent property taxes. So we asked, could we do it in January? And they said we could do it in January without the legislation. It becomes one line on your bill, and then next year that won't be there. So that separates it from your regular tax, property taxes. So you'll be able to see exactly, what that amount is. So if nothing changes with the government in the next few months, it will be on the January bill.
Thank you.
Yes?
Well, you mentioned earlier about the landfill, dollars earned. I can remember reading an article a while ago about that same subject matter, where the town of Colonie was being paid dollars from different towns and villages and whatever, and it was supposedly a good thing. But after you got done reading that article, you had to ask yourself, what is the chances of exhausting our landfill space, and what kind of a problem is that?
Okay, that's one of the reasons why we did the audit, because we wanted to get a clear picture of number one, how our landfill was operating, how effective was it? Number two, is it staffed correctly? Is it overstaffed? Is it understaffed? What's the potential for earnings, and how many years out? And what's the lifespan of the landfill? And with all of the new technology, the draft of the audit, we don't have the final yet, but the draft is pointing that we actually have more years than we read about a few years back. And that's because of all the new technology. There's space that has been purchased at the landfill that it could be expanded. Currently, we're working on a new cell as we close a cell, we work on a new cell. So the outlook for the landfill is brighter, you know, than I thought when I was reading probably the same articles that you were reading. And I thought there was a definitive year, and that was going to be the end of it, which I think was maybe around 12 or 13 years. It was somewhere in that vicinity.
I don't remember, but it wasn't a tremendous.
Yeah, I think the draft is indicating, I believe, that it's expanding to more like 18 years or so. But the other side of it, that what I've learned also, is that we have a transfer station, and that transfer station can also operate from the landfill for many years to come. So it's going to be critical to take a look at, we have some land already that's purchased. Is there more land that can be purchased without interfering with the homes that are there? Okay, because we've got to be cautious of that as well. And technology is moving so quickly. So again, these different type of audits and sessions that we have with people regarding energy and technology needs to continue through the future, because what we know today in a couple of years from now can be drastically different. And we could, as we've already had the opportunity to expand the landfill and the number of years through technology as well as space, and we have the transfer station. That brings us well into the future, and so with new technologies we need to look to see, can we even go beyond that? And so that's, scientists are working on those things all the time. We're very, very fortunate that we have a landfill in our town. It does generate a lot of revenue. And if you've read the papers, you've seen that Albany's having a real tough time with their landfill, and it's running out of time and out of space. So we have to be very, very cautious and monitor that very carefully. But I think at this point, from all indication, we're in a better position than the previous articles had stated. You're welcome. Yes, sir.
Supervisor, I understand your budget. It sounds very good. Most people today are concerned about overspending, whatever category you're looking at, and I don't care how you look at it, most people don't. You've taken in and spent more than we've taken in. That's overspending. You can't do that in any business, and I've been in business for many, many years. That's basically our problem. Now, you've asked for a one-time assessment or tax, what you call it. Also, I've worked with assessments. They can be very good. Temporarily, they can solve your problem if used and implemented correctly. However, the main question is people want to know, is this going to continue, or is this going to encourage you to overspend the budget? You're going to have this extra money now. You're going to say, well, we got this extra money, we can overspend the budget, or we can change something else around. Can you guarantee it's not going to create another overspending problem?
Well, I can guarantee you that in my term. I can't guarantee that for anyone else, but I can guarantee you that that is one of our main focuses. You're 100% right. You know, a lot of the situation that we're in right now is a direct result of overspending. There's no question about it. We literally, on a daily basis, look at every penny we spend. I meet with our comptroller continually. He's taught me an awful lot in the last 10 months. And there's no question that overspending is a major problem. It's a culture that has developed over a long period of time. We spend a lot of time with our department heads and employees explaining why we can't do certain things. Unfortunately, I have to be the bad guy, but the thing is that there are certain things that there's just no excuse to be spending that kind of money when you don't have it. And we literally didn't have it. There were millions of dollars that were spent when there was no money there. And so we need to be very, very cautious. This is something that needs to go on all the time, regardless of who's in office. It has to go on all the time. It's no different than operating your home. You have a certain amount of income that comes in, and you have a certain amount of expenses. Once you balance that out and meet your expenses, what you have left over is what you have in excess for either savings or spending. That's your choice. Obviously, we think it's a smart thing to do to cut back on the spending and be reasonable about what you're spending. Build a surplus. We need to build a savings. And we need to learn to do without. One thing that really surprised me was the fact of how freely the money is spent. Again, I've worked for many years in a school district where my budget for the year was $175, and you had to make sure you stayed within that budget, and if you needed anything else, you had to buy it yourself. And of course, the school has money for many other things, but as a teacher, that was my classroom budget. And you learned to work with it. You learned to do what you needed to do. And so we need to do that here. And I was very surprised, again, at how freely money is spent. And it isn't anyone's fault. As I said, it's a culture that's developed that if the money is there and you're in whatever department, that you can just go and get whatever you want. It's kind of that kind of a feeling, and we can't do that. We can't do that as a local community. We can't do it as a statewide. We can't do it nationwide. We have seen right now something, again, that I haven't seen that clearly, and maybe because I'm much more focused on it now, and I'm older now, and I look at my children who are now adults and my grandson, and I begin to look at things as, what about the future? Where are we at? How did we get in this position where as a nation we've got to borrow $700 billion? And it's the same thing in the town. We know how much money we have now. And we know how much we can spend. And we know for the future that we can't continue the same spending patterns. So we will have to change our habits. We will have to monitor it very closely. And we're going to have to make choices. There's only so much that we can give out. And it's your money. It's the taxpayers' money. And so we have to use it wisely. But definitely the spending habits, the attitude towards the whole budget itself, all of that has to go in a different direction if we're going to be successful.
Welcome to Channel 17, the Town of Colonie Government Channel.